All right, today I Meet the Neighborhood. I'm really excited about this because I've got a longtime friend of mine who's got some news to share and who has been in the middle of a rather large life change. And I'd like to introduce you to my good friend, Roberts Walford, who you may remember as Sean Walford if you've grown up anywhere in the Northumberland area. Let's go back to probably November of this past year, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the message that you sent to me when you reached out and said, "Hey, I've got some news to share"?
Vaguely. Do you remember? I honestly
I
don't.
remember it pretty hugely because I went, okay, what's this message?
So basically,
Roberts Walford.
Yeah, I basically told you that I had started to transition and that things will be a little bit different from now on. So not to be surprised when you see me.
I loved your approach. It was equal parts shocking and exciting, and it aroused curiosity. I wanted to find out a little bit more about your journey and where you've been, where you've come, and where you're going. And I want to go way, way back. I want to start first back to the days of Sean Walford.
Right.
As a young lad, take us back to the young person that you were back when you were a kid. And what do you remember back from those days? Who did you hang out with? Who are you? Where did you go to school? Tell us a little bit about your younger days.
Okay, well, I was pretty much your typical boy, I would say. Like, I played soccer, I played hockey, played lots of sports with friends in the backyard, road hockey, went to Grant Science School in Coburg, grew up in the depot. So those things were pretty normal. And then, but always felt different. I had friends, but nobody really close. So I always thought it was a little different in that regard. But yeah.
Well, when you say felt a little bit different, like growing up as a young man, surrounded in the culture that we were surrounded back in those days, boys will be boys like to roughhouse, boys like to do sports and all the sort of stereotypes that go with that.
Yeah.
Did any of that, like, you're immersed in that culture as a kid, and that's how you're being brought up, that's how you're being raised, and that's what your appearance is back then. Did any of that feel foreign to you, or did you ever feel like maybe
no,
the right?
I don't think so. Like, I think everything was in that regard was pretty much normal, but there was rare times where I had thoughts. My thought process was maybe different. Things that I thought about, I guess.
Right.
And, you don't really know why you think the things that you do. And because you don't think they're normal thoughts, you don't really ask anyone or let anyone know about it because you could be ridiculed.
Especially the 70s.
Yeah, that's right. For sure.
Different time, different place, right?
Mm-hmm.
How far back do you remember having those thoughts and something that felt different or felt not the way you think it should have felt? Like, how early do you remember having those thoughts?
I would say like probably 5.
Okay. Do you remember what that was like?
So one that it's always stuck with me was being with my mom in like a department store like Zellers or Sears or something like that, and seeing mannequins. And I wondered what it would be like to what I would look like if I could like climb inside and put my hands and legs inside the bodies. And I'm like, that's just not a normal thought. I mean, why would you think like that?
With women's clothes?
Yeah. Yeah, just random thoughts like that. And random for sure. And there was lots of they weren't all the time. It wasn't very frequent. Right. And as I got older, things like that actually became more frequent and thoughts became much more intense. So yeah.
So did it kind of ramp up towards adolescence, when our bodies are raging with hormones? And
yeah, it did actually.
You're starting to shift. Like, what was that shift like towards adolescence?
Curiosity, experiment with makeup and stuff like that the odd time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, always, it was always exciting to do, because I wanted to do it, but I didn't do it very often. And then, it was always seemed to be just enough, or I'm going to outgrow this, or, it never did. It never ended up growing out of it for sure.
It must have been, was it confusing?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I didn't want to think like that, to be quite honest. Like, it made things difficult. Like,
For sure.
you know, I got to admit, like, for me, I wanted to grow up. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids, raise a family. Those were important for me, and to do it well. And then to have this in your mind, and ultimately, I've never shared this with anybody up until a year ago, or a little more than that, when I originally told my doctor. I mean, that was the very first person that I told ever that I had any feelings of this. So yeah, so I always kept that bottled up, and it was easy for the most part, because I gotta admit, I found it quite easy to kind of blend in and play sports, because I love sports, but and that always made it easy. But again, you're hanging out with your buddies and that, and you always had these different thoughts all the time, and they were always at they'd pop into your head at stupid times, like, why am I thinking about this now? Or so that was always tough, to always be thinking like that.
Well, and I think you and I met through the hockey world probably 15 years ago,
I would say, yeah,
at
for
least.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, our kids were like 5.
Yeah, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah.
And when you came forward and sort of approached us about it, it was, like you said, it was a little shocking. But when you came forward, you could just see there was a calmness and peace that you have found by sort of stepping forward into who you really are. And I can tell you, as a guy that's now 51 years old, you're the first person in my life that's been through this transition. And I think I get so many questions, I kind of don't know where to start. So I apologize if I'm bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay. I do it all the time.
Well, but through adolescence, like, negotiating teen relationships and school dances and all of that kind of thing, like, I mean, to this day, you've always been attracted to women, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And when all that's going on in high school, like, in the back of your head, you're having these thoughts going, wait a minute, like I am a guy, I'm attracted to women, but I have these other thoughts and I have these other feelings and emotions. I'm trying to come to terms with what that means. Like, was it present kind of on a day-to-day, or did it come up at different times, or was it?
Oh, it was
always
random.
sort of present.
Yeah, it was always present, I guess. Like, you didn't think about it 24/7 per se, but it did jump into your head. Like, for example, not only did I want to date a girl because she was attractive, but I was always a little bit jealous because I wanted to look like that. So,
Right.
that it really puts you in a tough position.
Confusing.
Yeah, I mean, adolescence got to be confusing enough as it is, and throw that into the mix just adds a whole new level. So,
like, I know the firestorm that was in my head through adolescence, not being transgender. I can only imagine when you've got this other layer of thoughts going through and you're trying to come to terms with what all that means. Like, did you have any inkling that like, that this was going to be your journey early in life, or was this something that you sort of came to later on?
Yeah, no, it was something I came to later on. Like, I think because we don't have the social media that we have now, or the resources to know, or realistically, doctors and people doing research on this, and putting it out there that it is okay, that this is normal, that these are just other people. And maybe if I had grown up in today's age, then maybe I would have been younger. But at the time, there wasn't really anything. I mean, you weren't looking it up in Encyclopedia Britannica, to check this out and try to figure
it just wasn't a thing.
No, I mean,
right.
So yeah, you just kind of try to bury it in your subconscious and move on, and hopefully it goes away. And it's like when you fall down and scrape your knee, you just rub dirt on it and it'll go away. Don't worry about it. So,
well, and growing up in small town Ontario is obviously much different than if you grew up in a bigger city or California, where there are other communities of people that were either transitioning. And to be honest, like, transgender back then was a whole different thing. It was a whole different community. It was marginalized community. I still think
The
that's
subculture.
right? It was a subculture that
Yeah.
nobody understood or nobody got.
Mhm.
So you're kind of going through this journey alone the whole way along. And then along comes adulthood, and now you're getting married and you're looking at having kids. And what's going through your head through that process as you move into that sort of different level of relationship on an adult level? But subconsciously, like, or consciously, I I still feel like there's a woman inside of me that I have to address. Like that must have been a terrible, crazy conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. You know,
Like, what do you remember about those days?
well, not so much really what I remember specifically. It's just that I just know that those feelings are always there. Like, you know, you're looking, say for example, I was looking for gifts for my ex-wife for Christmas or birthday or something like that. And ultimately, sometimes I felt like I was looking at that stuff for myself,
Right.
which, and it kind of like, made you feel like take the edge off kind of like.
Sure.
So that's about the only way I can really describe it. You just try to minimize the way you feel and do little things like that nobody will catch on to or notice, that kind of makes you feel better. So you kind of just sort of zone out and pretend and
Right.
and hopefully that
Thank
fixes
you.
everything for you. And then and ultimately it never did. I mean,
Yep.
yeah.
Like I think you and your ex had a good relationship for a lot of years, and then things weren't good, right? Like a lot of marriages, everybody grows and changes and moves in different directions,
Right.
and things start to change. And in your mind, did your internal internal compass play a role in how you reacted or interacted with your wife and kids at the time? Like, was it a contributing factor, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, I really do. For example, I used to get into like, I would get into pouty moods and be like, you know, if my wife was painting her nails, be like, man, I wish I could do that. And then I'd be just kind of like be in a pouty mood. Well, I want to paint my nails, that type of thing. And you're just like, why do I think like that? And, when you're always thinking like that, I guess, and then you have your wife ask you, well, what's wrong? Well, there's nothing wrong. Like, what am I supposed to
I'm
say?
certainly not going to talk to you about it right
Yeah.
now.
Like, you need to tell me. Yeah. So, I mean, you could never really,
Tough
open up
on you,
about
tough
something
on
like
her.
that. Yeah. I mean,
Tough on you.
I tried to shield everyone from it, to be quite honest. I mean, I tried to live with it for everyone. Because really, ultimately, that's what I wanted. I mean, I really did. You
As you
know,
should.
yeah.
And then you're going through fatherhood, you're an active hockey coach in town, you're playing soccer, you're coaching on a bunch of different levels, and on this, and you've built this great network of friends and coworkers, and at your place where you work and everything like that. And in the background, you've just got these feelings, and this goes on for sort of years and years and years. And then we come towards the pandemic, and everything kind of changes, and you get a bit of quiet time. And walk me through that process of when you sort of came to terms and went, I think it's time that I acknowledge this, that I accept this and move forward, because I'm trying to wrap my brain around how much courage that takes, and how much bravery that takes to do that, because it's a level that I just can't bend my head around. And I think the way that you've handled that and the way that you interact with people now is such a testament to who you are as a person. And I'd like to know a little bit about that process when you realized, nope, this is where I'm at, this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be.
Well, I can't say really the pandemic was where the starting point to that. It was probably even a couple years prior to that. After my marriage dissolved and we got separated and ultimately divorced, I obviously dated and went out on, lots of dates, had a girlfriend a few times, different girls. And one specific girl I had, she was, pretty awesome. And I knew that. But again, like, she was attractive. We got along really well. you know, so eventually I still had all these feelings, and I'm like, if this girl hasn't changed the way I think, really nobody will.
Right, right.
So once that happened, I was like, I mean, I still like put on the, you know, I still went on dates, but generally I tried to keep my distance. I tried to, you know, not get too close to anybody, because I didn't want to put anyone, you know, make anyone feel bad by breaking up or going through all that, even for myself.
Yeah.
So eventually I just stopped dating altogether. And then the pandemic hit. And then and even at that point, feelings started to become much more intense and much more frequent. And it was almost unbearable. Like it really consumed my life. And at this point, it was the beginning of the pandemic. And to try to get in to see my doctor, that was the first time that I'd actually ever told anybody. And that was really tough, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I had a couple minor things that I went in to see about that really I didn't really even have to see him about, but they're excuses to get in to see him. And then at the very last second, I was like, in my mind internally, I'm like having this battle. Do I tell him? Do I not tell him? If I don't do this now, I might not ever do it. And he's like, is that all? And I'm like, no, actually it isn't. And I said, and I actually asked him for a pen and paper. I was so nervous. I couldn't even verbalize what I wanted to say. And I was so nervous, and I wrote it down on the paper, and I couldn't even, it was very, maybe because he's a doctor, he can read terrible writing, I guess. I don't know if they can write it themselves, but
Remember what you wrote?
I just want to start HRT. So I'm like, do you understand that? And he's like, yeah. So we talked about that. And then
Let me ask you this. How did it feel to say it out loud?
Scary, to be quite honest.
Can't imagine.
Yeah.
Was there a sense of relief though?
Yeah, for sure. But
Like,
the real relief didn't come until later on. It was still very nerve-wracking, because I just exposed myself basically. And
your doctor, but it's still another person, right? Like,
right.
this is the first time you said it out loud to another person. This
Yeah.
is how
Very
I feel. This is who I am, and I want to start hormone replacement therapy.
Yes. And it was really tough. I mean, the biggest things, you know, people ask me the question too is, well, why didn't you tell like a partner at one point in time? And I'm like, because then someone would know. You know, at that time
probably would, and that's like the ultimate vulnerability.
Right.
Like, is there any more vulnerable situation in a relationship to go, actually, I feel like inside I'm a woman? Like,
yeah,
that's going to go over like a fart in church, right?
Yeah, for sure. So at this point though, I was ready for this, and, you know, be damned with whatever happened after that. Like, I mean, I just couldn't live like this anymore, or live like that anymore. Like literally I wasn't sleeping. It was just affecting my life in every way possible you can imagine. So right. I had to get this done. So
and let's talk a little bit, because when we were friends, is when you were a man and you were pre-transition, and we knew each other as hockey buddies and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody would have suspected any of this, but you've always had kind of a gentle, soft spoken nature. But I got to be honest, there was always sort of a guardedness about you. And since you've come to terms with this and come forward with it, all of that's gone. Like, there's an ease about you that is so fun to watch, and a peace about you that's so fun to watch. Like, you're still the same person I knew before, but you're just way more at peace and confident and comfortable. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say so. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Yeah, I was always afraid that someone would see something like, so anyone that I've told now that knows that I've transitioned, they're like, I would never have guessed this in 100 years. And that has been the response 100% across the board. Not one
Agreed.
person has ever thought this, you know, this was the last thing that I would have ever told them. And, you know, that just shows how guarded I really was. I mean, I never wanted to let anybody have any idea that this was going through my head at any point. So it was one of my biggest, probably my biggest fear. I mean, obviously with your kids and stuff like that, I mean, they put a different type of level of fear, but for myself, like my own personal safety, I was always guarded with that for sure.
Yeah.
So
it's funny when you talk about emotional safety, because it's such a powerful driver of behavior. And I think when you talk about being safe, one of the great stories I think that I love about your transition so far is the first time you met your dad, and you were going out sort of dressed as a woman and got to see your dad for the first time. Tell us about that experience.
Well, after I basically had told my friends, close friends and family, it wasn't soon after that, my dad had to go to Peterborough for surgery, and he asked me if I was able to drive him up there. And obviously I made time for, whether I was busy or not, I would have made time to do that. But it seemed like the right time to kind of expose him to what was about to come. So I mean, I didn't go over the top or anything like that, but I did a little bit of subtle makeup and earrings and a top, nothing too crazy, like more gender neutral, I guess you'd say, but you could definitely tell. And I thought that it would be an easy way to kind of just sort of ease him into it. And he didn't bat an eye. Like he didn't say anything really. We just talked like we normally did on the way up to Peterborough. So it was really nice. I mean, he wasn't stammered or anything like that. So
did he know?
Very calm, cool.
Had you talked to him about the whole thing before and told him what was coming, and this was sort of the first time you'd shown up in the appearance?
No, I just did it.
Just showed up.
Yeah. So yeah. No, he was super good about it.
But I think as a parent, as parents, we just want our kids to be happy, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me, knowing you, first of all, it doesn't surprise me that his reaction was a little bit muted and acceptance. That doesn't surprise me at all. And I don't even know your dad. But, knowing that parents just want their kids to be happy, and knowing the way that you've approached this with everybody else, I'm not shocked that he didn't have a big reaction, I think. And, when you told your two boys, they had sort of a mixed reaction, right? Because that's pretty tough for teenage boys to come to terms with. But I think, again, the way you handle it sort of dictates their reaction and how they've had to sort of process this whole change.
They've been really, really good. And if it is bothering them, they deserve an Emmy. Like, I have no idea if it really does bother them, but I mean, we still go about things that we normally did before. We still have our weekend dinners and do all kinds of stuff like that. And our conversations are always, the same. So
they have lots of questions.
They did a little bit. They haven't really asked too many questions. I mean, your typical ones, but I think like everybody, they were just shocked at first. So it's kind of tough to ask any questions. Just yeah. So
Dad's got some news.
Yeah. But my oldest son was really funny when, I had set up a day to tell my dad and the kids. And they were kind of like, it was probably a weekend that I started telling people before I had told them, just because I didn't want them to be the first people that I told, because I didn't know how I was going to deal with telling them. So I wanted to kind of more practice really on friends and, be confident enough to be able to talk to them. And, and it was probably the scariest of all the people to tell too. So it might have been a little bit of, being procrastinating on that part as far as pushing them back a little bit. But ultimately it was just because I wanted to feel confident in what I was saying to them and, have them reassured that everything was going to be okay. And I went over lots of different ways that I would tell them, or, so anyway, so ultimately, I invited my kids and my dad over for a barbecue, and then my dad came over first and we're by ourselves. So I told him, and then I'm like, well, I got to go get the boys. So I'll be back. So on our drive back from their house to my house, I basically broke it to him because I didn't want to have it in front of my dad. He's already heard it and everything like that. So it was kind of like just our time.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I basically broke in that topic with them like everybody else. He says, well, I'm seeing a doctor now for the last, X amount of months. And my oldest son's like, whoa, wait a minute. You mean you're seeing a doctor isn't like dating a doctor, or seeing a doctor is in like medical reasons? And I actually started to laugh. I'm like, that's a pretty insightful thought.
Valid question.
Yeah. So, um,
Not exactly dating.
so yeah. So, I couldn't stop chuckling, and so when I ultimately told him that I was transitioning to be a woman, his response was, "You're punking me because you're laughing." And I'm like, "No, I'm laughing because of your response to my, you know." So yeah, so it'll stick with me quite well.
Him too.
Yeah, for sure. And then my youngest, he doesn't say much at the best of times, so he just kind of sat there and just absorbed it all.
Well, and I think as the news sort of, you've talked to friends and family, you've talked to obviously a doctor about this. I want to get to the medical side of this shortly as well, because
Sure.
in previous conversations you and I've had, it's been such an educational process to learn how much medically goes into this that I had no idea about, for starters. But then the time comes that your coworkers are going to find out what's happening, um, and the reaction from your coworkers, for the most part, has been overall acceptance, right? Like everybody's just sort of like, okay, well, this is new, but here's what it's going to be, and looks happy, so yay.
Yeah, it's been so I prepared myself. I kind of had in my mind a game plan of who I would tell first and have a process. And work was kind of my last. And everybody that I had told, I was asked them to sort of keep it to themselves because there was some family that hadn't told yet. And then ultimately, once I got everybody that I needed to tell told, work was the next step. And once I told work, I can't control who they talk to or anything like that. So I'm basically public from that point on. So
Right.
once I become common knowledge at work, I'm common knowledge everywhere in my mind. So, and then a few of my family had expressed concern about how things were going to go at work, whether, safety or lose my job, and I knew some of that stuff wasn't even, I wasn't concerned about losing my job over this. I mean, it's 2020, that this doesn't, for the most part, doesn't happen,
Yeah.
especially here in Canada. I mean, but I could see there's a little bit of validity to their concern, and working in a factory environment. But anyway, I kind of set myself up where probably like 50 to 60% people would be quite fine with it. There'd be probably 20% would be indifferent, and then 20% probably just not accepting, but just not say anything, which
Sure.
I think is still probably pretty accurate. But overall, it's been much more positive than I could have ever expected. Like everybody in general, they're just that's just one more segment that's exceeded my expectation. So, I kind of had the expectation I'm probably going to lose some friends. I'm probably going to lose some family, and then coworkers. And, I think if you set yourself up like that and things are better than that, I think you've won.
Has there been anybody sort of in your, I don't want to say immediate circle, but closer circle that reaction wise has surprised you where they haven't been accepting it? Because you said, I feel I'm going to lose some family or some friends. Like, have any of those people,
No,
like, have you lost anybody through this?
not that I'm aware of at this point. So all my close friends, and they've all been really good. I mean,
Awesome.
it's been hard to explain, really. Their support has really propelled me in the last 4 months. I mean, it's expedited the process and because of them.
I love watching your social media reaction, because every time you sort of hit a new milestone and you share it on your social media feed with, here's something I did new today, the sort of outpouring of love and support from people and comments of like, try this or do this, like, I find that really cool to watch, because it's almost like your community has sort of wrapped their arms around you and everybody's rooting for you. That's kind of what it feels like from the outside looking in.
Yeah, it really does feel like that. And it is like that, I think. It's been very, it's an emotional thing actually, to try to accept all this. Like, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I've been pretty lucky. And what actually makes me a little bit sad is that not everybody gets the chance to have this type of acceptance, which is, I've been following women on, or men and women on Instagram for probably 3 or 4 years now. And some of them, well, from all over the world, really. And some of them go through some really hard times, losing friends, family, their jobs, harassed. So those types of things. And
Aggression.
yeah, I haven't seen any of that.
Like,
And I really do feel bad for those men and women that have to go through that. I mean, that shouldn't really happen at all.
no, I think it's I don't know. I think our society is becoming obviously way more educated and tolerant and understanding than it was 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
For sure.
I think the people that have walked this path before you obviously had much different paths, but I don't know if you're giving yourself enough credit for your approach. I mean, you and I have talked about this off mic, and I think the way that you approach it with people, because there are people that are transitioning, or people that are from the LGBTQ trans community that are militant, and I think when they approach things militant, they get a militant reaction. And I think the way
Right.
that you've approached this, because when I knew you as Sean, the person you are today as Anne is the same person. There's still that gentle, calm, assured demeanor about you when you approach people and talk about it. And I think because you're approaching it that way, you're getting that back in return. And you're not expecting people to, like, it took you 50 years to come forward and say this.
Yeah.
There's other people that are 1 week into this journey trying to wrap their head around, oh, my friend Sean is now Anne. And the fact that you've approached it that way, and you're not expecting people like, turn on a dime, get this, wrap your head around it, or you're not my friend anymore, or
Right.
you don't get me, so screw off, this is none of your business. Like, there are people in situations that go through that sort of thing. And I think you're not giving yourself enough credit for the way that you've sort of talked to people about the transition and got them to understand where you were and where you're going, I think is a huge testament to you. And I think you deserve credit for that. And I think that you're seeing that reaction, but that reaction that you're seeing on both in person and social media is partially because of the way you've approached it. And I think, was that a conscious thing, or is that just who you are?
A little bit of both, I think. Yeah. I think I overanalyze stuff a lot. So
No.
so I think before I actually do something, I go over, what the scenario could be and how I would react. And so I kind of prepare myself for different reactions and I guess respond accordingly. So yeah, there's been a lot of preparation on my part, trying to think, look from both sides and then prepare myself. And, so yeah, I definitely agree with you about how I've approached things.
It's also a maturity thing too. Do you think had you done this in your 20s, you'd have that same sort of measured approach to things?
Probably not.
None of us would.
Yeah, probably not.
None of us would. In our 20s, it's guns ablaze, and here we go. Let's talk a little bit about because in one of our previous conversations, I learned so much about the medical part of this that I had no idea about. And you sort of mentioned HRT, or as I come to learn, is hormone replacement therapy. And that's sort of one step in the process. And you had a difficult time finding information in the beginning, didn't you?
Well, yeah, it takes a little bit of research for sure. Things Things are a little different nowadays. Like I think years ago you had to go see like a psychologist, a therapist of some kind, and you went to see a specialized doctor for this. As where now it's just like your regular doctor takes control for this. And you know, to try to get to that stage, you know, it was tough in that regard. Like it isn't like you just go buy these drugs over the counter. So yeah, I definitely did research as far as like knowing what was going to happen, what to expect, so that when I ultimately went to my doctor and they were asking me questions, because you know it really is their decision whether they put you on this or not.
Really?
I think so. I think they can kind of veto it if, you know,
If they think it's not genuine or.
Yeah, right. I could be wrong on that, but you know, I just wanted to basically educate myself and make sure that I was prepared to not say anything or do anything that would ultimately not get me in a position to have this. So, but yeah, I mean, really, there's so many different levels of this too, as far as like, some women are just fine not taking any hormone therapy and just dressing.
Right.
And, you know, me personally, my mind is much more past that. Like, for me, I've always had a discomfort with my body. So, you know, the first step is the hormones to start getting your body moving in that direction. And then eventually surgeries will come afterwards.
How far down the road is that? Did they tell you? Or is it different for everybody?
No, well, I think there's like a guideline where once you start on hormone therapy, you have to live as a woman for a year, and or be on estrogen. So, and then after that, then they can kind of assess where you're at, and make sure that this is where you want to go. Because once they schedule you with a surgeon, it isn't like you're just, you know,
you're not going back.
Yeah, you're not going back after this point. So they want to know that you're ready and this is the way you want to go. So
when you started the HRT, what were some of the changes you noticed quickly?
Probably, I noticed my hair wasn't growing as fast, like body hair. The skin was definitely softer.
Right.
Like totally different texture. Skin got dry versus oily, stuff like that.
Is that why you use so much cream?
Yeah.
My wife uses like cream by the pound.
Yeah.
I think I've used cream 3 times my whole life. I had no idea it was just a woman thing. I thought it was just her.
Yeah. Your face dries out, like it gets kind of scaly, and it's weird.
Really?
Yeah. And then your genitals and stuff like that, they begin to shrink. There's a T blocker, spirolactone, that you take.
Yep.
So it stops your body from producing testosterone. So eventually you start to shrink in that area. And then fat starts to develop. So, and then you start to grow breasts and those types of things.
Have you noticed any, and those are the physical sides of things, was there any emotional changes that come with that?
Not right away. I think more of my emotional stuff has been just a release of probably having had this pent up for so many years.
Right.
But I have noticed that I'm a little quicker to the Kleenex box lately. Yeah. So as where, yeah, I never really would tear up very easily, as where I'm starting to tear up a little bit more now. And yeah, things like that.
Is some of that sort of, I don't want to say like crying at commercials, but because obviously that could be part of it, but is some of it like just a happy cry that you're getting to be who you've always wanted to be?
Possibly. It's hard to
kind of come through in waves. It's almost like the reverse of grieving.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So I don't know. I think you could be right. I think it could be a little bit of each. It's hard to differentiate between that, but I definitely, another thing too is, and again, I think it might be just a little bit of both, is I'm definitely calmer. Like I don't fly off the handle as easy as I used to.
Dude, you were hardly volatile when I knew you before.
Oh no, I was pretty volatile.
Maybe just because I didn't spend a lot of time around you, but
Yeah.
in the times that we were always together, you were like the least volatile guy in the room.
No, generally I would build it up and then kind of explode, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, but yeah, I'm definitely not like that now. I definitely take an easier approach. I'm more thoughtful, less explosive.
I mentioned reverse grieving. Let me come at that from a different angle. Is there a version of the grieving process as you sort of say goodbye to Sean and get to know and grow into Anne? Was there any of that at all?
Not really. I think it's little pieces here and there, where I definitely, I think about, being a father, how I'm going to interact with my kids and certain things now is going to be a little bit
Sure.
different.
Sure.
So those types of things, yeah, I think there's a little bit of sadness in that, but I don't know if there's an actual like grieving period for losing myself so much. I wouldn't say that. I think that probably more for other people. Like I know actually my mom's two sisters, they said that they had a little bit of grieving period knowing that, they've lost a nephew, but
Right.
So
You're getting a niece.
yeah, no, but, and, they were pretty honest and they've been really good and quite amazing, really. So yeah, I think for people, especially my, close relatives and some various other people, I think there has been a bit of grieving process for them. Yeah.
And I think as that sort of happens, as the sort of chain of acceptance continues, you mentioned about being a father to the boys, and I think, the boys are obviously going to still come to you for stuff that they may not come to their mom for, and vice versa, right? Like kids will gravitate to the parent that they feel most comfortable with on certain subjects,
right?
And I think, do you think that's going to change at all as the transition continues?
I'm not sure. I got to be honest, I don't know if I've put that much thought into it. I don't know. Possibly, I'd like to think that my kids would still come to me for certain things. I mean, I can still teach them how to shoot a puck and that type of stuff. I mean,
they're almost adults now, by the way.
Yeah,
One of
you know what I mean.
You've already done that. You've already talked about it.
No, but I mean, if there's still certain things like that I can still teach them, and I'm pretty sure they still feel comfortable come and ask them. So
there must be a pretty massive sort of rainbow scale of things that you've learned about yourself in the last year and a half to 2 years. And can you give us a bit of insight as to what you maybe have learned about yourself that you may not have known before this whole thing came up forward?
Oh, wow. Need a bit of thought on that. Definitely that I think you touched on earlier. This has become much easier than I ever expected. I honestly, once I got through my first week, I couldn't believe how easy it was and how easily I accepted who I was. I think that was the biggest thing I learned. I didn't know really what was going to happen or how I was going to
actually, when you bring that up, that's weird. Like not knowing how you're going to accept yourself when you finally say it out loud. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of scared me too, but
right.
So I'll give you an example. Like for the first, I want to say 3 months, seeing my doctor, and she would ask me, she's like, have you told anybody? And I'm like, no, I'm not ready yet. Still scared to death. And ultimately I knew that there's going to come a point in time where there are going to be some major changes and people are really going to notice. And, you know, it's not going to be, I didn't want it to get to that point. So where basically I have to tell them because I don't have any other choice. I wanted to prepare people before that. And so anyway, so she'd asked me several times and I was like, I still couldn't bring myself to do it. And once I finally did it though, and my doctor has been really, really amazing. She's like, you just have to own it. She's like, tell somebody and you'll find it's going to be much easier to keep telling people. And then once you get going down this process, just own it.
I think that statement, you know, the older I didn't understand that when I was younger. And the older I get, that statement rings so true. No matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing, like just own your shit.
Yep.
You know, and as soon as you do that, a whole bunch of clarity comes forward. I can't describe it. I can't put it on paper. It's just when you own your shit, good, bad, or ugly.
Yep.
It's like the path opens up for you almost. Like, is that kind of what you experienced at all?
I would say that's pretty accurate.
It's weird. I can't explain it. It's weird how it happens. But when you go, here's who I am, here's who I am going to be, this is how I'm comfortable, regardless of who you are, you know, whether you're a person in transition, whether you're a person that's struggling with weight problems, a person struggling with money, or whatever it is that you're dealing with or who you are. Maybe you're healthy and you're fit and you don't want to admit because you're embarrassed to tell your friends that you love doing whatever. Like as soon as you own your shit, it's like the universe just clears that path for you. And I think, you know, you're kind of seeing that, no?
And it not only clears the path, but it clears your head. Like
right. The storm quiets down, right?
Yeah, it really does. It's quite amazing. Like,
wow.
Yeah, like I didn't know how I was going to react walking around work. That was probably one of not my biggest fear, but just probably how I was going to feel most uneasy. Probably I didn't know how confident I would be at work, and to be quite honest, I don't really care. So I do it
because you own your shit.
Yeah, that's right. I really don't.
You're not responsible for other people's reactions, right? And I think when you get to that level of assuredness and confidence of this is who I am, you kind of you get bulletproof.
Yeah.
And I think I've noticed a change in you. I know my wife Ann has noticed that change. Like you carry yourself with that sort of bulletproof confidence now that may not have existed before.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, it's really quite weird. I do carry myself much more positively now. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, not being comfortable with yourself for so long and, you know, having to wear the clothes that you wear and not necessarily liking them. And that really does affect you actually. So,
like when you got to a point where the emotions, the feelings were so strong that you're like, no, that I can't live like this anymore. Like when you were going to work in men's clothing, did it almost feel like a costume back then?
Yeah, it was uncomfortable.
Right.
It really was.
Right.
Yeah.
That's let's talk about some of the fun side of this, because this sort of journey for you has included a whole bunch of discovery. And you've been really cool about sharing a lot of this discovery on social media with people. And it's stuff that guys don't like. I can barely get up to comb my hair on a good day.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of women's maintenance that you've been introduced to and experimented with. And I say maintenance only because it's stuff guys generally don't do, like fingernails and eyelashes and eyebrows and all that kind of stuff. What's that been like to sort of learn new stuff and sort of step into that femininity that that you now get a chance to enjoy?
It's been pretty amazing, to be quite honest. And it doesn't seem like work.
Oh, really?
No, not at all. Yeah, it's been really, really fun actually. Like, so before Christmas, I was like, I don't know, I've got a whole bunch of time off. I've never had my nails done, like
Sure.
a real manicure, have my hair done, all that stuff. Yeah.
A pal.
So, things like that. So, was really weird that everything landed on the same day. So I was a bit nervous for everything to kind of fall into place because the timelines were very tight and kind of bouncing around. Like I had some laser therapy on my face. And then I had to go to the hair salon and get my hair done. And then I had to go to Whippy to get my nails done and then fit in a couple other things earlier in the day. So, but leading into that day, I mean, I felt like the night before, I felt like a kid at Christmas. I mean, I literally was so excited I couldn't sleep. I mean,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was
awesome.
Really fun, actually. Yeah. So I was like,
yes.
I was like giddy the whole day. I can't even explain the type of, I don't know, the happiness that I had.
Listen, we should tell people that when you walk into your house now, you have a boot shelf.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like with some kick-ass boots. That's a whole other level in the sort of feminine journey that guys don't ever have to deal with.
Yeah.
But that's like something else you've totally embraced is this killer boot collection.
Oh, it's more of a sickness.
I think our good friend Di Rob would agree with you on that.
Yeah. So it's been really nice to be able to finally like enjoy them. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Let me ask you this. I know you're still pretty early in this journey, but with any luck, there's somebody watching this chat that knows somebody in their life, or perhaps is that person that is where you were a few years ago. What advice or what guidance would you offer to someone that came forward and said, hey, I'm in the same shoes? What would sort of be the first thing that comes to mind if someone approached you about that, in terms of what you've learned, where you've been, how you feel today? Like for someone that maybe just starting this journey, what would be your best advice?
Prepare yourself mentally, just for every different possibility, whether like good reactions, bad reactions. And then after that, I think you'll find yourself mentally just stronger. I think it'll be such a relief. Everything will just kind of wash away. At least that's the way I found for me. It was just, it was unbelievable once I pulled that first rock out of the dam and it just kind of like exploded. It just kind of,
how big a sense of relief was that?
It was huge.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine where you go, like it's like you can breathe again, you can see color. This is who I am. This is who I get to be. This is what the future of my life is going to look like. Like I get to be me now.
Yeah. And again, back to like telling somebody, like the most mundane thing, like having coffee in the morning, is absolutely amazing now. I mean, not like drinking coffee isn't amazing in itself, but I mean, just little subtleties of everyday life like that is like, I just smile at stuff like that now, as where, you know, I might not have normally smiled at something like that. So life is much better. I mean, unfortunately, not everybody is going to have positive reactions. So it's really hard to tell someone, you know, to give them some good advice, because who knows what's going to happen for them down the road. But for your mental health, I think it's important to finally to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Loud.
Pardon me, sorry.
Say it out loud.
Yeah, say it out loud. Yeah, definitely prepare. Like I said, prepare yourself. I mean, you will lose people. And once you can get over that hurdle that you're prepared to lose, if you're not prepared to lose people, maybe, you know, then probably not do it. But I think it'd be in your best interest to you know, accept whatever happens and just do it for yourself.
I would think though, the people that you lose, I don't know what better way to say this, but like the people that you lose, if you come forward and say, this is who I am, this is how I want to live, and this is what's going to make me happy, and down the road, this is my life, like the people that you lose probably shouldn't be in your life in the first place. Is that
probably not
right? Like,
I think that's a fair assessment for sure.
you know, so let me ask you about this. As you go through the transition, I know that down the road you're looking forward to surgeries and full transition. What does relationships look like for you down the road?
Again, that was something I prepared myself for prior. I'm not actively looking for relationship So, if it happens, it happens. I'm fine with that.
Yep.
And if it doesn't, I'm fine with that. I've accepted that. I mean, I've had a family. I've, been married. So this is kind of about me right now.
Yeah.
So, if I continue like this and something happens where I get into a relationship, then I'll accept it. But I'm not at a point where I need to look at that too much right now.
I was going to say, you got a fair bit on your plate as it is. So
yeah. So it's hard to bring somebody into something like that, but who knows what it'll bring. But I'm fine. I think I'll be quite fine if I knew that I wasn't going to have anybody. So yeah.
What are you looking forward to?
Just being me. Yeah. Like literally just doing what I'm doing every day and enjoying it. I mean, not having to hide is, I look forward to that. Just
That's so cool.
it's been amazing actually in that regard. So, obviously like having the surgery, definitely things like that, I'm definitely looking forward to, but, overall, just being me, like it feels so good to finally just be like this.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
For people that are just sort of finding out, I mean, you and I hang in the same circles for the most part. We know a lot of the same people, but there are going to be people that watch this that are going to be a little more curious about your journey. Give your social media handles so we can find you and follow the path.
Ha. Okay. Actually, I gotta check it here. I forget.
Don't tell me you have to look up Ann Roberts Walford.
Yeah, I do. So, well, actually on Instagram. Oh, my phone's not working.
Of course it's not.
So on my Instagram.
This is how much prep we did for this interview, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I can't even find it.
Well, I would just say people on Instagram and Facebook can look up and Roberts Walford with an underscore, right?
Oh, it was established EST. That's what it is. EST underscore 1971 at Instagram for Ann Roberts Walford.
Love it. Tell people where the name came from.
So when I was doing my research on Instagram, before I told anybody, I wanted to be anonymous, and I just kind of was trying to come up with a name, and a common name. My mom's middle name was Ann. My sister's middle name is Ann. My aunt's middle name, cousin, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, I'll use that name. And then my mom's maiden name was Roberts. So Ann Roberts. And then I was going to change it to that. And then my ex-wife actually messaged me, and she had a concern. She couldn't understand, and along with my kids, why I was going to change my last name. And it was more of an oversight. So I just hyphenated my mom's name and my name. So yeah, that's where Ann Roberts Walford came from.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, my friend.
For sure we have.
I want to say thank you for doing this, because when you and I first talked about this a few weeks ago, it actually stemmed from a conversation in my living room where you like, I was asking questions, Ann was asking questions, and you were like, I feel like I'm being interviewed. And I thought, we should probably do this just to let people in on the conversation, because I think you have a lot of really valuable things to say, a lot of really educational things for people to say, and hopefully a lot of acceptance things that you have to say that people can sort of wrap their heads around, and maybe share your story. I mean, you sharing your story, I think, with other people creates a positive ripple, and throw that pebble in the pond and let's see where it goes. And I'm really grateful for your honesty and your bravery and being able to sort of talk openly about all this stuff. We've covered some really intimate stuff. And I hope people that are watching get some value out of it, because I think your story is such a great story of sort of becoming who you want to be. And whether it happens at 50 or happens at 20, I hope whoever is watching this feels the same way. And I think you sharing your story, I hope, has that impact on other people. So it's been really cool to have this discussion, at least on camera, because we've had a similar discussion in the living room. And I think it's probably time for a glass of wine.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Thank you very much. So happy to have this.
Ann Roberts Walford, you can find her on Instagram and Facebook. EST_1971. I think I got that right.
Yes.
You know, and if people have questions or want to know more, they can obviously reach out and you can have one-on-one chat.
Most definitely.
Have a great night, my friend. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much.